Now, ladies and gentlemen, we move on to our next session. Mallika Sarabhai with Ramjee Chandran. This session is about dancer Mallika Sarabhai's new book, Experiments with Living. To give you a perspective, Mallika Sarabhai needs no introduction. She's a dancer, actor, activist. She played the role of Draupadi in Peter Brook's The Mahabharata, first in French and then in English, and performed all over the world. She's going to be in conversation. Driving this discussion will be Ramjee Chandran, host of Explosity's podcast, The Literary City with Ramjee Chandran, writer, magazine publisher for over 3 decades, plays the jazz guitar as well. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give them a big round of applause as we welcome Mallika Sarabhai with Ramjee Chandran.
What a lovely turnout. It's amazing for Bangalore to get any kind of turnout. This is my hometown, so I'm allowed to say that. Now, let's plunge in straight away. You know, I'll give a short introduction to Mallika, and then after that, get into the questions with her. Now, she's already very famous. There's no need for me to give you the Wikipedia version of Mallika. If you want that, just go to Wikipedia. It's all there. You know, she's... Everyone knows that she's the daughter of celebrity parents, Dr. Vikram Sarabhai and the famous dancer Mallika Sarabhai. And yes, I guess so. That's just for being a daughter. Now wait till I tell them the rest of it. Right. So I read her book in free fall, My Experiments with Living, in preparation for a podcast where she was my guest. It's called The Literary City. And I had a wonderful time on that podcast with Mallika, and it's such a pleasure for me to be able to do this live with her today. Now, when I was prepping for the podcast, the first thing, the title got me. You know, forgive me for thinking that it's a downward spiral of a famous person, you know, in free fall. So I figured that, okay, it's one of those books. But instead, when I read that book, what I got was a story of courage, perseverance, victory. There are lots of adjectives, but importantly, a lot about common sense. And the reason I say that is because while she, in the public eyes, appears to have lived a charmed life and doing the most wonderful things ever, she has actually had a number of crippling personal issues through which she built a career and a life, not an ordinary life. In other words, she took charge of herself. Simply, she found a way. And she did this without putting the blame on her whole family, right? So as most biographies and memoirs do. Now, Mallika is, again, the short wiki version. She's a dancer, a choreographer of some note, an art form. She combines modern and classical forms to much international acclaim, a Padma Bhushan for her troubles. And inspiringly, she has dedicated herself, a large part of her life, to social causes. You know, and even a foray into running for public office, if only just to make a point. Now, her book takes you on this journey through one part of her life, her relationship with reclaiming her health. Now, buy her book to get the whole story. We have 30 minutes, and I'll give you a taste of what I have come to learn about her from several sources. And if we have some time towards the end, I will you know, pass it on to you for some questions as well. So let's start with a few things that characterize her life. So can I plunge in, Mallika? It's wonderful to talk to you today.
Thank you very much.
So first of all, as the gentleman said in the introduction, you played Draupadi in Peter Brook's Mahabharata. Of all the people, they picked the right person to play that role. How did that come about?
It was very strange, actually. I had done a lot of amateur theatre, but never professionally. I had done films. And in those days, and I'm talking of 1983, 84, we in Ahmedabad were definitely B-tier city.
Right.
And always read in the Times of India and Indian Express what was happening in the rest of the A cities. And I was reading about Peter Brook and the production and his coming, and Pupul Jaikar having selected 200 people. Wow. That he would audition, of course, in the big cities, Bombay, Delhi, Calcutta, Bangalore, and Madras. And that Peter wanted either Krishna or Draupadi as an Indian because he felt those were the two uniquely Indian characters. And we read on and on and on, and at the end of the month, there was no announcement of who was going to play anything. And I was pregnant and I had very bad hepatitis. And I had been in bed for 4 months. And I got a telegram. In those days, there were telegrams.
Yes.
I got a telegram from the cultural attaché of the French embassy one morning. It was April '84, saying, "Are you in Ahmedabad? Because I want Peter Brook to come down to see you." I was sort of very surprised. And I was in Ahmedabad because I was in bed. So they arrived the next morning, 5 of them, Jean-Claude Carrière included. And I was completely yellow, very skinny, with hair down till here. And I thought they must have come to offer me some faltu role. And they talked to me. I had no French, incidentally. They talked to me for about 15, 20 minutes. And then Peter said, "We would like you to come and audition for Draupadi." And I nearly fell off my chair because Draupadi has been a favorite character since I was about 5 years old. And I panicked. I had been married only 2 years. Bipin and I had started my publishing company, Mappin, that very month. And I didn't really want to do it, but I did want to do it. And all my friends said, you know, we would give an arm and a leg for a role with Peter Brook. And I was flying to America. I auditioned with his assistant director at the Lincoln Center. And then at 3 in the morning, arrived in Paris. Was auditioned at 3:30 in the morning in his theater. It was a strange audition because he really played the Navarasa with me. He'd say, "Do this scene with Kichaka as a tragedy, or do this scene as pathos, or do this scene." And the person who I was auditioning with, it's a sort of 3-balcony theater. And he would run up and scream down at me from somewhere. But I was offered the role. And I panicked completely. And had it not been, especially for Amma, I wouldn't have done it because we were just starting off on a career. I was going to have a baby. And he insisted on a 2-year contract. And I thought, I can't do this for 2 years. But that's how I got the role.
That's fascinating. But tell me, did you, when you first encountered Peter Brook and you auditioned for the role and everything that followed, was there a tangible difference in the professionalism from what you had faced before this?
Well, I had never faced professional theater. I had never faced international theater. Dance, yes. But theater, never. So I didn't really know what to expect, except that every single actor across the world who was a friend thought he was the Messiah. And, you know,
Right.
thought I was stupid to even question whether I wanted to do this role.
And even though you were a newbie to the whole thing and you started to play the role, there was a point in which you had an issue with the interpretation of Draupadi, right? Now, it's quite the vogue right now for everyone to be writing novels about the women's perspective from the epics and so on. You did this decades ago, and you did this with none less than Peter Brook. Please tell us the story of that whole thing. What did you do? And
Well, very early on in the rehearsals, I was interpreting a scene, and Peter said, "Mallika, keep your voice down because you sound like a shrew." And I said, "Peter, in India, there are no shrews, there are only Shaktis." And he didn't like that very much. And then it was not only my role. I was arguing for Kunti, I was arguing for Gandhari. And I said to him at one stage, I said, "Why did you not choose the Ramayana? You're a white male, Anglo-Saxon male, and if you want your women in a certain place, then you should have chosen the Ramayana. Why did you choose the Mahabharata?" And then he did not want me to play the scene where I say, "I will wash my hair in Dushasana's blood." And he said, "It's too gory." And again I said, "Ramayana for you, Peter, Ramayana." But I have to say that through all those arguments, and Jean-Claude Carrière was my savior because I would go seething with anger, seething with disappointment, wanting to pack up and leave. And Jean-Claude would say, "Mallika, just relax, just keep your arguments going."
And
And
he was
on
the
the
assistant
day
director?
on the day of our big opening at the Avignon Festival, that morning Peter came and said, "Yes, I think you should do that scene."
And when you asked him, when you suggested to him that you were less than happy with doing a fairy tale version of the Mahabharata, his first response to you was dismissive, monosyllabic, you said.
Yes, Peter was somebody who didn't like to be contradicted or questioned when he was with the other acolytes and acolytes. And if you went to him in his office and said, I think this interpretation needs looking at, he would agree. And then he would come and present it to the group as his point of view. And that for me was somewhat problematic because I'm a very impulsive person. When I think of something, I say it, and it gets me into a lot of trouble. But with Peter, I learned that, and I have to say that it was a 2-year tumultuous relationship before we settled down. And then at press conferences, Peter would have me sitting on the stage, and after a very nice session, he would say, and now if you want to hear my horrible sides, I present to you Mallika Sarabhai.
You know, one of the things is that you capitalized on whatever you did, but more than anything else, you have been very true to the arts, to the art form. And it occurs to me from everything I've seen and read is that you've not taken any shortcuts, you haven't pandered to clickbait, you've been an artist. What's with what's going on now? Do you suggest that people still hold themselves to an artistic standard?
You know, when I was growing up, Amma was doing things like using Bharatanatyam to talk of Dalit atrocities, using Bharatanatyam, which is a form of Shringara, to talk about dowry deaths in Saurashtra before the word dowry death was coined. And I thought all artists did that with their art, to be very rudely shocked, to find out when I became a professional that she was an exception. I think that remains so. There has been in recent years a lot of exploration by writers of suddenly rediscovering Draupadi and Sita and so on and so forth, and of dancers in choreographic styles. But in actual content, the work is still very much within the realms of Saugandha Lahari or Krishna stories reinterpreted from a different side, or finding another epic, or finding another part of the Vedantic question. I think the need of artists, or the gumption or gall of artists, to actually use performance or writing or whatever. Writing is much more, but performance, to talk about things that really concern them and that can get them into trouble, is still unfortunately very far between. And I think that in the kind of situation we are today in India and the world, the arts are about the only form, and I mean the arts in the largest sense, which can actually reach out against the walls of prejudice and walls of hatred and walls of exclusion that we have built. And to not use that language, to me, is giving up on being a citizen, giving up on being a part of a human race that desperately needs a change of course. And I just feel very sad about it.
But there was a time we heard these stories, and I'm sure in dance, and I know a little bit about the music end of the business, when people took years in perfecting their art form. I can understand that in pop culture, the quicker you are to the market, the better it is. Is there a danger that classical is as well as getting to that point where it's a question of quick fame?
There aren't shortcuts to using language. As Geetanjali was saying just now, she has the permission to use it into quotes incorrectly because she knows how to do it correctly. And this is something that I learned from my mother very much, that you had to have the art form in your DNA before you start change. So if somebody challenges me and says, do a Pandanallur Margam, I can get up just now and do it. And it's because I have the grammar and I practice the grammar every day that I give myself the permission to wrangle with the grammar and the content, not otherwise.
You said something to me on the podcast that completely cracked me up. You had a variation of Bharatanatyam.
You know, in Gujarat, we are very rightly called a society of business people. And business goes into the arts as well. So there are teachers, and many of them are my students as well, who, depending on what you are willing to pay, the basic 7-year course gets shorter and shorter. And in Gujarat, I say that Bharatanatyam has become Taratanatyam. Tarata is Turant in Hindi. So yes, Taratanatyam is very available in Gujarat. And around the world, I have to
I
say,
imagine.
including in Madras and Bangalore.
I imagine, yes, that's right. Now, the business of what's happening in the industry, it's something of a corruption.
Which industry?
In the arts, in the classical arts, I'm specific about the classical arts and how the classical arts are coming to bear. You mentioned Bharatanatyam, for instance. But the standards that people hold themselves to, or the standards that the gurus hold their sishyas to, has been deprecating a little bit. Now, I understand it's a form of corruption, the way you said it. Again, corruption is something that you railed against from a very early age. Now, you, barely out of your teens, did an IIM from Ahmedabad, and then you got a PhD in organizational behavior. The two are connected. You did the PhD in organizational behavior for a reason.
I went to a tiny Montessori school. It was the first Montessori school in India. It's called Shreyas, and my paternal aunt ran it. And it was a very protected school in the sense that we were completely unaware that the larger society had a gender bias and a caste bias and an anything bias. And then I got thrown into St. Xavier's College, 100 students, and all my fellow students seemed to only want to know one thing, which is who do they know who could swing the marks to them? And I didn't understand it. And as I went along, my one question was, why do people get corrupt? And when I was in the IIM, David McClelland, who is the father of the need for power, need for achievement, need for affiliation, and so on, was a visiting professor. And in something that he said about what he was studying in the need for power, I felt an answer could be found of my question of why people get corrupt and who doesn't get corrupt. So my PhD was about that, really.
Did you find the answer?
I did, indeed. I did. I did primary research on 900 children from the ages of 11 to 19, because at that time, 11 was still the age of innocence, not anymore, but at that time. And if you went to 11-year-olds, they genuinely believed that if I'm just now putting in 2 hours of work and I get a second class, if I put in 4 hours of work, I will get a first class. By the time they are 15 and facing their board exams, already about 50% have swung away to say, no, that's not how the world works. We need to pull strings. And by the time they are 19, there's only 10% who feel that the process itself is worth it and not only the results. And I tried to find out what was common in this 10%. Was it demography? Was it the medium of education? Was it the kind of school they went to, the kind of family they came from? No. The only thing that was common in the 10% who still felt that the process was worth it and not the result was that in their childhood, they had had one adult, parent, friend, teacher, who had said to them, the world is not a fair place. Don't think that you will get the result you want, but the learning is the fun. Learn, because that is what education is about, not about anything else. And I think that 10% has probably gone down to 1% now.
I imagine, yes.
So,
Well, the PhD is consequently Dr. Mallika Sarabhai.
indeed.
It's for that reason.
Though I have to say something very funny to you as well. IIM wouldn't take me because the head of department, a professor called Pulin Garg, basically didn't like me and said I'd had to go through my first and second years again before the PhD program. I said, I'm not repeating it. I've got very good grades. I went to Harvard Business School, and they said that their cutoff age was 29, and I was 20. They said, come back in 10 years. So the only alternative for me was to attach myself to the not-so-glorious Gujarat University. But as long as I was working with the professors I wanted to, that was fine. I got so excited by my work that I finished my research and writing in 11 months and submitted it, and they said, no, 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 the minimum period is 2 years. So I had to wait 2 years. And then they awarded it to me on the 1st of April.
It figures. Consequently, as an extension of that, your one foray into politics. You ran. Why did you run? What happened? Are you doing it again? Do we need a prime minister from Gujarat again, sir?
No, thank you. But you must not disclaim my very strong Dravid heritage. I'm a genuine mongrel.
Yes, yes. Let me say that you are half Gujarati,
I am.
half Tambran.
My
half Malayali.
My Kathiawadi maternal grandmother's family will say, no, we are not Gujaratis, we are Kathiawadis. Okay. So I'm quarter Kathiawadi, quarter Gujarati, quarter Tamil, quarter Malayali.
That's good. I had it at 150%. She's one of us. The politics.
In 2002, after the pogrom in Gujarat, I felt that people who genuinely wanted to govern the country, to see that the last person got a leg up, needed to get together whatever their political ideology. So I went around the country for the next 6 or 7 years, talking at large gatherings to young people, to Rotarians, to women's groups, saying, we need to put aside political ideology, commit ourselves to making India a more just and a better place for all the voiceless people. And commit 7 years, 2 years before an election, to working in the area you are going to stand from, in getting a credibility that you are there to actually work and not to just become 5 times richer in 5 years, which is what happens all the time. And I said, if I can gather together 200 people and they stand, and if even 30 get elected, that will be a huge chunk in parliament, enough to actually make a difference. And I said to people, you will never be re-elected, so this is a 7-year stint, because you will not indulge in corruption, you will not indulge in adding to your kitty by playing the industrialist's way. You will actually govern, and you will govern using all that is available to us, all the schemes that are available to us, and see that the last person gets affected by them. In 2008, 2009, not one person had actually committed. So in 2009, I thought, okay, let me at least try and see if one can even do the electoral process transparently and correctly. And on an off chance, I don't know, maybe, I had asked the Congress not to put a candidate against me. But the Congress itself has so many skeletons in the Gujarat Congress that they did not want me to be there questioning them. So I stood as an independent. And when you stand as an independent from somewhere as important as the Gandhinagar Ahmedabad constituency, all the parties become an old boys club. Mm-hmm. So anything I did, any kind of complaint I made about violation of rules, they would become a club. My violation of rules comment wouldn't be looked at for 15 days. But in those 30 days, it has been the biggest learning curve of my life. I used to leave at 6 o'clock in the morning, and over 30 days, I have met and have notes of the complaints of 2 lakh people. 2 lakh people. I have got a room full of notes saying, Dai Ben from such and such village says that for 7 years they've not had a bridge across the Nalla, and therefore the children don't go to school in 4 months. Now, I challenge anybody in this country who has stood for political office to come up with a database like that. And when I lost, I went to my constituents and I said, listen, I've lost, but Mr. Advani, for the first time in 20 years, moved to Gandhinagar for 3 weeks. At least you got to see who you are electing.
With, in such a short span, so much, such a packed life, and when you do write your memoir, it's all about your battles with health. And it just doesn't add up. How is it that somebody who can achieve that much in dance, which is a very physically demanding form, can write a memoir. This is not an autobiography, it's a specific memoir about a specific part of your life. And that's what makes it highly compelling. One of the things that I want to say is that this book is a compendium of alternate therapies. And it's fascinating that while somebody in your position had access to every single allopathic therapy in the world, you decided to take it upon yourself with the same zeal that you did everything else to dive into alternate therapies as such. It's all in the book. I'm not going to outline all of that. But you quit smoking in your discovery. You say you don't know, you were hypnotized or you weren't hypnotized. For all those people who are trying to quit smoking right now, hypnosis, does it work? Tell us the story, what happened?
I didn't want to get married. I didn't think I wanted children. But I said to myself that if I ever want a child, I'll quit smoking a year before I get pregnant, because it wouldn't be fair on the child. I met a man that I thought, I really want to marry this guy. And 1 year down the line, we wanted a child. But before my wedding, I was in New York and I was with a friend and I said, I want to quit smoking, but every time I quit smoking, I eat so much, I put on weight and I hate being fat. And she said, there's a marvelous Jewish psychologist and he specializes in smoking and weight loss. And it's very difficult to get an appointment, but let me try. So I got an appointment and I went into this gentleman's clinic. And before I even got to him, I was asked to pay $200, which was a lot of money then. And one part of me was saying, you're an actress. You're going to act this out. Nothing's going to make you hypnotized. And I went in, and there's this typical Jewish man. I mean, Woody Allen characters are like that. Sort of bent over and, you know, like this. And he says, your friend tells me you're an actress, then this is going to be very easy for you. So why don't you lie down here? And then he started talking to me about, he count down to 5, you're now fast asleep, you listen to what I say. And he started talking to me about how wonderfully filled with oxygen I would feel running up a hill. And I'm lying there saying, I dance 5 hours and I'm not breathless. And this is rubbish, you know. And then he started talking to me about the horrors of cancer. Imagine the mouth, and imagine this, and imagine that. And I was imagining and still saying to me, Sali actress hai tu kya hai yaar? And 10 minutes later or 15 minutes later, he says, okay. He empties my bag. There are 2 packets of Dunhill, which are very, very difficult to find in New York. He jumps on them and smashes them. He gives me his card and he says, this is where I am. I'm in Miami and Los Angeles and here every week. Call me collect if you ever want to smoke again. So I go out and I say, this is not going to work. And I'm early for a lunch appointment. I'm walking uptown and I'm looking for a place where I can buy British cigarettes. I have never smoked since then, ever. And people say to me, in one 20-minute session, and I say, yes, and I've tried to find another hypnotist, and lots of my friends have tried hypnotists who have 30 sessions, 20 sessions, 25 sessions, and they still end up smoking. So I'm not sure whether it was because I really wanted to quit, or it was the marriage of wanting to quit and his hypnosis, non-hypnosis, but it was something.
Does it work for weight loss?
My book will work for weight loss.
I agree. It's true. It's true. You know, when finally, towards the more recent time, you write that one morning, after all this, one morning, you woke up to a crippling pain, chikungunya, and you write these words, if I may quote you.
Yes.
Did 40 plus years of carefully nurtured good health and clean living amount to nothing? But that wasn't true. You soldier on. Does nothing get you down?
Oh, lots get me down, but I have lots of loving friends and, more importantly, a brood of dogs that I love and who forgive my moods and my swings and my anger and my depression and everything. Of course, things get you down. Everybody gets down. But the point I was trying to share, I am trying to share in the book, is that ultimately, I have only one body, and I have only one self that I call my own. And that is really the only thing you have control over, or can try and influence, that you can try and make better. So rather than doing anything else, the feeling of good health, the feeling of getting up in the morning and saying, "Hello, day, I'm ready for you," is worth more than anything else. Anything, and I promise you, anything else. I've had hundreds of awards, and I've won lots of things, and I've had amazing relationships, but the relationship with my body and my mind is what sets me to do anything that I do. And I beg of all of you to give your bodies that chance, to make your bodies your friend, your ally, because that's one thing you can do. Nobody else can do it for you. And that's really what it's about.
I can't believe we timed ourselves this wonderfully. If in Free Fall, my experiments with living, it's a wonderful book. As you can see, it inspired me greatly, and I really felt great after reading the book. Mallika Sarabhai.
Thank you very much.